This week in East Brunswick, construction continued on the soon-to-be-completed Community Players Playhouse 22. Let's join Township Arts Coordinator Dolly Vasta for a progress report and a brief tour of the construction site.
Hi, I'm glad you could make it back. Well, as you can see, we're in the final phase of this whole little production here. You know, I always think when I'm producing a show and any show gets to this point in a production, I call it the point of no return. You can't go back, you just go on ahead. And that's exactly what we're doing now. October 7th is really looming up, and of course that's our opening night for Mikado. But since you've been here last, there's a lot of work that has been done. Let me see. The masons have finished doing all their brickwork. And as I explained to you last week, the brick was taken from the foundation of the old house. It's brick that was made by the South River Brick Company. They're no longer in business. And from what I can understand from the masons, this is one of the best bricks that was available. In fact, if you went to buy it today, you would really pay a small fortune for it. We feel it's a little piece of history that's repeating itself. Today we have the plumbers, the carpenters, and the electricians. They're all here working. You know, some years ago, the Community Players did a production called Pajama Game, and in it was a song, Racing with the Clock. And if I can recall the lyrics, it went, when you're racing with the clock, and you're racing with the clock, and the second hand doesn't understand that your constitution isn't made of rock. That's exactly the point we're at. You know, in a couple of weeks, when you do come back, I might even be able to serve you a cup of coffee. But listen, let's not stand here any longer. Come on in and I'll show you around a bit. Okay, what will you have? Coffee, tea, soda? Well, listen, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be able to give it to you. This is our refreshment booth, or our counter. The mason still has some work to do on it. The front of this, if you can see, if Pete will pan down for me a minute, is there are little tabs sticking down. And the mason is going to work with the brick that we have left, and he's going to do a counter thing for us in the antique brick, which I think is kind of special. All of a sudden, it got very quiet in here. Come on, guys, you can keep on working. Next to me over here is the ticket counter. So if I can take any orders from you today for tickets, why, I'd be very happy to. Well, guess what I'm standing on? Well, what used to be standing here, that is. Do you remember the old poles that used to come up in the middle of the aisle that you had to kind of crane your head around if you were sitting on an aisle seat? They're no longer here. Every seat in the house is now perfect vision to see the stage. Those two beautiful lights that you see up on the wall, they were donated to us. They're replicas of old carriage lights, and our electrician just got them installed the other day. The walls themselves are going to be covered in a very beautiful royal blue fabric. It's a flame retardant fabric which we ordered and just came in. We're going to start on that Saturday. Well, I finally made it to this stage. It took a long time, but I finally got here. You know, I wonder if Mary Martin really started this way. I want to show you something in the back. You see those gray doors back there? I think they look like old cellar doors myself. But actually, they're for a very practical purpose. We'll be able to move scenery in and out of them without coming through any of the other exits. And Pete, if you can try and get some of the height that we've got now on the stage, we went all the way up 15 more feet, so we really have a tremendous amount of room. And the stage itself now goes back to the back wall, so the size of the stage is 35 feet wide by 60 feet in depth. We can do some pretty good productions on a stage like this. Well, listen, it was really great to see you back. As I said, if you come back in 2 weeks, I'll be able to make you a cup of coffee out at our snack bar. And don't forget, call us for tickets. We need all of your support. Just 254-3939. Take care. I'll see you.
This week found students and teachers returning to school after their summer break. Teachers were welcomed back on Tuesday with a luncheon and later a series of speeches by education administrators and school board officials. followed by a keynote address by Rutgers University President Dr. Edward Bloustein. Bloustein began his speech with a parable.
It's a new program. Everyone's looking for a new and visionary perspective on school administration. And the vision I offer arises out of a Malaysian proverb. There are those who can see a flea as far away as China, but are unaware of the elephant on their own nose. Many recent critics of our schools see the fleas and miss the elephant. They tinker with details of school administration while ignoring the reality of the society which surrounds the schools. They seek healthy schools, but look away from the easy corruption, even decadence, of the society at large. The public school is the society in microcosm. It can teach effectively only those school skills which society esteems. It can inculcate only those habits of mind and behavior which society values. It can't create its own moral and intellectual climate. It is rather the creature of the culture in which it finds itself.
Throughout the rest of his address, Bloustein tried to identify and separate the elephants from the fleas, showing how problems within schools relate to larger problems within our society.
You, I, and all of those gathered here today that know that most of our teachers are hard-working, qualified professionals. But there can be no doubt that a substantial portion of them are poorly qualified, uninspired, and unhappy in their work. And there can be little doubt that the abysmally low standard of student performance is a byproduct of the mediocre performance of some of our teachers. But in trying to improve teaching performance, are we looking at the elephant or the flea? Will changing teacher training requirements, competency standards, and introducing more and superior tests of performance of teachers and students take us out of our educational doldrums? Such expedients can help, I'm sure, but they must not be confused with the elephant, the most significant cause of our trouble. The larger issue here is that we pay our teachers badly and undervalue their importance in the society generally. We signal by the rewards we offer that our brightest students had best avoid the dead-end profession of teaching. To put it bluntly, doubling teachers' salaries, you'll be happy to hear this, doubling teachers' salaries or even increasing them by 50% would do substantially more to raise the level of skill in the teaching profession than any new certification process. Raising salaries in this way would do more, I say, to raise the level of skill in the teaching profession than any new certification process or new testing procedures. It's even more important to observe that without vastly improved salary conditions, nothing we do about certification or testing will significantly raise the level of our teaching skills. I decry teachers and school systems which have debased the rigor of their curriculum. I decry minimal standard levels of study of English and foreign language, of mathematics and science. I decry giving up all forms of rote intellectual tasks. I decry the lack of compulsory homework. In sum, I decry taking the hard work out of education in favor of pleasure and immediate satisfaction. Sure, we suffered in the past from the imposition of mental calisthenics, which served some pedant sadistic urges more than they served students' intellectual needs. I admit as well that pleasure and entertainment are useful learning tools which were much neglected by previous generations of teachers. However, it's a fundamental error to inculcate a habit of mind which takes flight from any intellectual task that it is not fun. It is also a fundamental error not to prepare students for study and intellectual endeavor as hard work, work which, like other forms of effort, only becomes satisfying and pleasurable to the degree it is undertaken over long hours with intensity, concentration, and conviction. But here again, public education's failures, your failures and mine in this respect, pale beside those of the society whose values we mirror. Where are the homes where mothers and fathers read to young children instead of abandoning them to the overpowering anti-intellectual influence of television? Where are the homes, indeed, where serious and demanding discussion takes place, where the babble of the black box has not driven out the human voice? Can any society which allows, no, entices, seduces, sometimes even compels its young to spend more hours on the average in front of a television set than at schoolwork, can such a society hope to educate its young to the demanding requirements of the intellect? Some of our schools are more like battle zones than retreats from contemplation and study. While teaching, many of our administrators and teachers are also called upon to police antisocial behavior ranging from physical assault to sexual abuse to drug and alcohol addiction. But these are not the school's failures, as some critics would have it. They are symptoms of prevalent forms of social disorder in, among other agencies of social control, the family structure, and in our legal system. Teachers will not be able to say no effectively and without undue effort and distraction from their teaching duties until parents condition their children to accept no for an answer under appropriate circumstances. If discipline doesn't begin in the home, it can hardly succeed in the school.
In conclusion, Bloustein outlined a few positive steps which he felt might help cure these educational and societal woes.
Since the social support our public schools require goes much beyond our colleges and universities, I would also favor the calling of a series of statewide conferences on public education to address the kinds of questions I have raised in my talk today. I have already spoken to the Chancellor of Higher Education, the new Commissioner of Higher Education, and the Governor of the state, and I have good reason to believe that with state governmental cooperation, we will be convening a conference of parents, church, business, and union leaders, leaders in politics, medicine, law, and the other professions at large, people representing the public at large, who will sit down with educators and attempt to restate the fundamental principles of public education and reaffirm the extraordinary forms of public support it requires for public education to succeed. There are tasks you and I as educational teachers and administrators can and must undertake within our schools to improve their performance. There is an elephant out there, however, in the form of public ignorance, indifference, and apathy to our public schools. I call upon you and your colleagues throughout the state to join me and our other colleagues in education to go forward together to awaken the public to the peril of their failure to assume their full and knowledgeable responsibility for our public schools. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and welcome once again to Consumer Aware. I'm Mary Tenaccio, and I would like to take a few minutes of your time to explain something that's been happening to East Brunswick residents in the past several weeks. There have been several water filter companies that have been subjecting East Brunswick residents to scare tactic sales into buying water filters. I would like to make you aware of some of the facts that are important to you and for you to know if this happens. One, decide whether you want or need a water filter. Water filters run anywhere from $20 to $600. Know what you are purchasing and why. East Brunswick water is not contaminated. There are numerous checks run by the township itself, by our water department, and there are outside independent firms which have done also water reports for us. All of this information is filed in our library, and it is there for anyone that wants to see and read it. Do not be intimidated by these sale tactics. Please, if anyone approaches you I ask you, number one, to get the name of the company and to call the Consumer Affairs office. And number two, if you do want a filter, make sure you know what you are getting, why, and if you really need it. Thanks so much for your help and for tuning in tonight to Consumer Aware. See you again next week.
Hello, my name is Barbara Jensen. I live in South River, and I'm a volunteer with Literacy Volunteers of South Middlesex. On September 8th, the 14 public libraries of South Middlesex County will celebrate National Literacy Day. According to the U.S. Census report, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot read well enough to cope with the problems of daily life. Do you have a problem with reading? If you cannot read or want to read better, Literacy Volunteers of South Middlesex can give you another chance to learn. We offer free one-to-one tutoring to anyone over the age of 16 and reading below the 5th grade level. Tutoring is private and confidential and can take place at any of the 14 libraries in South Middlesex County. If you read well and want to teach someone to read, you can become a volunteer tutor. Please take this chance to learn again. If you want to learn to read, or if you want to volunteer to tutor, please call us at 679-5622 or call your local public library. Thank you.
This week's council meeting began with a discussion of Thomas P. Tyrell, the township's new Director of Public Safety.
I've sent you a memorandum recommending Thomas P. Tyrell, with a soft Y, as director of the department. He has since 1955, he was on the state police. He retired in 1981. He's been working with the Division of Motor Vehicles as internal consultant since then, and he comes to us very well qualified, and I'm very pleased to recommend him.
All right, we've received a copy of his resume. All the council members have met with him individually to discuss his background and his philosophy on running the police department, and I received as President of the Council the background report and check that was run on him by our own investigative session, and all of his recommendations and credentials checked out on that background report. Is there any questions from the council?
None. I think we should be deeply gratified to have a man with his particular background and his philosophy of concern for dealing with people as opposed to regulations. Certainly can appreciate him opposed to long service.
Okay, I would have to agree with Mr. Hurd. I think that Mr. Tyrell comes to us with excellent credentials and background, and I think that he will perform very well for the community. So we'll put this on board.
We have had enough. I don't know.
Later, members of the East Brunswick Committee for a Nuclear Freeze and Mayor William Fox spoke on the nuclear freeze referendum, which will be voted on at next week's council meeting.
Dunham's Corner Road in East Brunswick.
Thank you.
I don't know whether this is in the packet that you received, but I think it's important to perhaps explain why we asked to have this on the agenda this evening. And we believe that one of the best ways to do it is for me to take a moment and read an editorial which appeared in one of our nearby newspapers recently. And it will, I think, very well explain why we feel it's important and why we would like a very positive action.
Good.
Beautiful. They received it.
But if you want to read
Yes,
it.
I would like that. The Matawan Borough Council has tabled until its September 7th meeting discussion of a proposed resolution that calls for a bilateral, verifiable nuclear weapons freeze by the United States and the Soviet Union. When the governing body first discussed the resolution earlier this month, one councilman suggested that the Borough Council isn't an appropriate forum for such discussion. Using that same argument, the Middletown Township Committee recently refused to take a formal stand on the freeze. We disagree. Township committees and borough councils are exactly the appropriate places. The development, proliferation, and use of nuclear weapons is a hometown issue because our hometowns will be the front line in a nuclear conflict. In the very literal sense, nuclear war would hit us where we live. The question of nuclear arms production, testing, and deployment really is a question of whether or not the future has a future, whether or not our children and grandchildren will have a world to grow up in. It is more than a political question, and the answer too important to be left to politicians in Washington or Moscow. It is a question on which the people must speak and must be heard, and there can be no better place to hear the voice of the people than a local governing body, the unit of government closest to the people, the unit of government that speaks for America's hometowns. The nuclear freeze movement is a true grassroots movement, and its momentum came from the most hometown of governments, the New England Town Meeting. To date, 425 New England town meetings have adopted resolutions calling for a freeze, and so have the governing bodies of 144 communities, large and small, in the nation, including 33 in New Jersey. Non-binding referenda calling for a nuclear freeze will be on the ballot this year in 8 states, including New Jersey, and in several cities too. Matawan and Middletown aren't alone in Monmouth County in wrestling with the issue. Roosevelt has adopted a resolution calling for a freeze, and some Little Silver residents have announced plans to petition their borough council for adoption of a freeze resolution. We can differ on how we answer the question of a nuclear freeze, but in the long run, no hometown can escape it. I might add, in addition to the ones they've named, Highland Park, Piscataway, Princeton, and many others in our immediate area have issued such a resolution, and we strongly urge, as citizens of East Brunswick, that this town council do likewise. Thank you.
2 points on this. I first am always reluctant for us to either as individuals or as a government body to become involved in issues over which we have little control. So we tend to stay away from foreign affairs and issues of international relations and national policy and so on. But I think that the editorial said it very well. This is an issue that affects us directly. I don't happen to believe in a benign world, and I think that if this were advocating unilateral reduction, that this would be I'd have a lot of difficulty with that, because I don't think it is a benign world. I think that there are certainly forces in the world that would put their system over ours, and that sounds a little bit far-rightish, but I believe it to be the truth. But this talks about mutual negotiations and mutual agreements with other powers in the world, and I think that that's a reasonable thing to do. As far as East Brunswick is concerned, just 2 things that I would point out to you. One is that 6 or 7 months ago, I learned that there were funds available through, or might be funds available through the Federal Office of Emergency Preparedness, which is the new name for civil defense activities, for hardening of municipal communication centers and so on, to withstand any kind of natural or man-made disaster. And since we have a basement area and there's flooding around here and we could stand some improvements, I said, well, why don't we apply for some of that money? And it turns out that East Brunswick, along with the communities right around us, is not eligible for hardening of our communications and command sites because what the federal government and their planning has done is written off these areas. We're too close to ground zero.
We'd be vaporized. It wouldn't matter.
That's literally true. We are too close to ground zero to invest the money in hardening our communication and command centers. And what we're supposed to do, and this goes to the ludicrousness of the whole thing, in the emergency preparedness planning, we're supposed to evacuate and go to Pennsylvania someplace. Now wait a minute. What is supposed to happen is that all the towns along Route 18, going to the east now, all the way over to the shore, we're supposed to go in turn to Pennsylvania, so that we would wait. No one in East Brunswick would leave until everybody in Old Bridge had gotten to the west. And not only that, but we're supposed to take all of our supplies with us. We're supposed to commandeer trucks, and we're supposed to go to the grocery stores and have people load up the groceries. And you and me and the staff and the police department and all the citizens, with our groceries and all the supplies we need, are supposed to get into a convoy after we've waited for Matawan and Old Bridge and Englishtown and others to get on the highway and get over to Pennsylvania, and we're supposed to proceed in an orderly way to someplace in eastern Pennsylvania.
The Kiwanis Club of East Brunswick will present its 20th annual Historic Auto Festival this Sunday, September 12, 1982, from noon to 4 p.m. at the Middlesex County Fairgrounds, Cranberry Road in East Brunswick. The festival is conducted in conjunction with the Old Timers Auto Club. Approximately 250 antique autos are expected to be displayed. Many of these autos have appeared in recent movies and TV commercials. Special displays of antique fire engines and old military vehicles will be shown this year. There will also be entertainment, refreshments, a model car contest for youngsters, and a flea market of old car parts. Proceeds from the show will go to further the civic work of the Kiwanis in the community, the majority of which is for youth and senior citizens. A rain date of September 19th has been established. Bring the whole family, enjoy an afternoon at the festival. Once again, that's this Sunday, September 12th, from noon to 4 p.m., Middlesex County Fairgrounds.